Hello everyone, it is TooAwesome here with another video. So I recently saw Captain Marvel and it was pretty good. I'm genuinely surprised because the trailers for this movie did not do it enough justice. Honestly, the trailers looked bad. So going into this movie, I didn't have high expectations, but I was genuinely surprised about my experience. I came out enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would, and that doesn't happen often. First off, some of the editing and shots in this movie were pretty good. They almost always expressed a certain creative style and creativity that most Marvel movies don't use that much. I vividly remember being in the theater and looking at the way they shot a certain scene or the way they made one scene channel over to another, and I was pretty blown away. Like I said before, this movie had a certain style that you don't see much in Marvel movies. Also, this next point might be me, but personally, I think this movie was pretty vibrant and colorful. Just by looking at the trailer, I think you know what I mean. Don't get me wrong, I think there is another issue with Marvel, and it has had a hard time with. They usually use very bland colors and desaturate their movies, but there are plenty of video essays about this, so I won't try to explain it. But I think they have recently been trying to fix this issue, because it hasn't really appeared in Infinity War or Black Panther. Now, the plot for this movie wasn't horrible, but wasn't anything spectacular either. It was just pretty average. Personally, I don't usually like when they use amnesia to start a story unless it has some overall use to the plot, except to be a lazy writing tool to explore the world, but I think it was used quite well in this movie. The way they gave you little hints to her past, then realizing with her, that was pretty satisfying, like realizing everything with her. It was good. Also, I'm not going to spoil anything, but a big reason why the twist worked in this movie was because of the amnesia. On the topic of the twist, it was really good. Like, if you told me at the beginning of the movie what the twist was, I would have been blown away. But throughout the movie, you get subtle hints and you start to pick up the idea anyway. But once the movie confirms it, it feels very satisfying, and it works into the story very naturally as well. Okay, enough about the twist. I don't want to keep going on and accidentally spoil anything, so I think I'm going to cut it short here. Anyway, so the first act was pretty good. I enjoyed it mostly. There were some boring parts, which were basically the first 20 minutes. The second act was also very solid. I found myself really enjoying it, and that was fun. Then the third act was also okay, but once they got off the ship, in my opinion, it got a lot better. Seriously though, Captain Marvel is pretty OP, but in a good way. It's kind of what I like in anime so much, where, like, the main protagonist is going to be fine, and when they get so powerful that there is really no threat, and it kind of worked in this movie. At the beginning, it felt a lot more grounded, but as it went on, it left that sort of idea behind and kind of became Captain Marvel senselessly blasting enemies. Personally, it worked for me in this instance, but I do hear a lot of people being vocal about how there are no stakes and the action scenes were bland, and I beg to differ. First of all, did you really think Captain Marvel was going to die in her first solo movie before even participating in Endgame? No, that's ridiculous. Also, if you even watch the trailers, you would know that she is really powerful, or even just glanced at a comic book. So if you thought they were going to pull an Incredible Hulk and make a villain exactly like her with the same powers, then you are very wrong. Plus, that would be pretty boring and cliche. I don't know. I just don't like when they do that. I like villains and heroes who have very different powers. Also, I'm very happy that Marvel didn't shove feminism down my throat. I think Marvel made a good, powerful female role while still being respectful to the male audience and not yelling at the male audience for just being male. And even though they did have a lot of women in the majority of the roles, it doesn't seem they were putting men down to make the women seem smarter. A good example of this is The Last Jedi. In that movie, they made Poe to be a really stupid and reckless person, even though he wasn't like that in the previous movie. It just seemed that the character and woman were good because they were smart, strong, and independent in their own right, and not by putting men down to raise themselves up. Something that wasn't written well, though, was the dialogue for Carol Danvers slash Captain Marvel. It by no means was bad, it just wasn't that smart or witty either. Compared to the rest of the characters, Captain Marvel's lines just seemed very clunky and out of place. And on top of that, the character herself wasn't very good. She had some cool scenes where she would be funny and take things lightheartedly, then it would be thrown out the very next scene for it to return again right after. It just didn't make much sense, and the overall tone of the movie was all over the place as well. And each new tone and style would be thrown out for the next one to take its place to further the plot. You know how I said this movie had good editing? Well, the beginning was really bad. But once they get on Earth, it gets a lot better, so just stick with it, alright? You can get through it. It's not horrible, but it's pretty bad. Also, another thing that I want to mention in this movie is the pacing. The pacing in this movie is really good, and I never really felt bored or that the movie was overstaying its welcome. Except for the first 20 minutes, but you'll get used to it. Some Marvel movies try to be longer than they are, but I don't think this one did. Also, I never really connected to Carol Danvers. She just seemed like a plot device to keep the story moving along. We never find any motivation, and she just ends up being a flat character with no motivation and very boring goals. I know I might not be the target audience that this was aimed at, but when I saw Wonder Woman and I saw her run out into no man's land, somewhere that no one has ever gone before, and risked her life just because it was the right thing, was awesome and motivational. And comparing it to this, Captain Marvel pales in comparison. And honestly, I don't think gender should have anything to do with writing a good character. I know representation is important because some people don't get many characters to identify with. But you can't make that the only and defining characteristic of your protagonist. It just doesn't work well. I'm not saying this movie suffered from that, but, you know, it could have been better. It could have been great, actually, but it wasn't. Overall, this movie has a decent main character with a bad script, a great supporting cast and a decent story, mostly good editing, some fun fight scenes, and overall good pacing. If you are interested in this movie, definitely give it a shot. It's a fun time. I give Captain Marvel a solid 8 out of 10. Also, one last thing before I go, I did not like Goose the Cat. I didn't think he was funny. I heard a lot of people laughing in the theater. I just wasn't one of them. Also, the explanation for Nick Fury losing his eye was dumb, and it annoyed me because it was all for a joke that wasn't even funny. Okay, that was my opinion. I have mine. You have yours. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the down in the comments below. Please, no spoilers, since some of the people watching this might not have seen the movie. But, as always, stay awesome. TooAwesome. Thanks for watching.